So we live?
When we're live.
Okay, so welcome to the March 30th, 2020 meeting of the Tiverton School Committee. I'm going to call to order. We have remotely Mrs. Palish, Mrs. Farnworth, Mrs. Pavo, and Mrs. Black. And I am here with Dr. Peter Sanchioni and Mr. Stephen Robinson. Do you have an agenda? So
First thing is only two things on the agenda.
we only have two things on our agenda, which is the 2020 budget and the distance learning plan, and then a possible executive session afterwards. Without any further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Sanchioni to discuss the distance learning plan.
Want to go that one first?
Okay. And my mic's Mrs. Pavo says she cannot hear us.
Yeah, you are. I can hear you.
How about now, Elaine? Elaine, try speaking to see if we can hear you.
She's muted. She's muted. I can tell by her.
You may need to unmute your iPad.
Sally, you're good?
Yes.
We're doing the distance learning. Yeah, let's go distance learning first. Thank you.
Elaine, can you hear anything?
No, she said she can't.
Hmm.
Do you want me to use my phone to call?
Yes, you could. Elaine, Steve is going to call you. I need to, that was you. I need to leave my phone open, unfortunately.
What's your number?
Show it on the screen.
864.
Hello?
Elaine,
Yes.
it's Steve Robinson. I'm here at the meeting.
Yeah.
So we're going to put you on speaker. Is that okay?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. But I wonder why I'm not getting a voice this week. I didn't have any problem last time.
Yeah.
Looks like she's
All right.
she's
All right.
muted.
That's fine. And I'll watch and listen to my phone.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Let's go.
Thank you.
Plan Dr. Sanchioni is going to update us on. And again, I'd like to say I believe this is on behalf of the entire committee. We remain incredibly grateful to the hard work that our teachers are doing and incredible leadership of our principals and Dr. Sanchioni and our other staff, and also our drafted teachers, all the parents of Tiverton. So saw one post that said, if you see me talking to myself, I'm having a parent-teacher conference. So anyway, Dr. Sanchioni.
Okay, I'm getting some text about this slide. Okay, we're good. People are just saying they can hear us. Great. Okay, so yes, there's been some changes to the plan for our distance learning as articulated by the governor this week, and immediately we put it in a response to that plan. So I want to share with you what we've been talking about. First, as I speak to all of our staff and to all of our families, I want to make sure that everyone continues to recognize that their first responsibility is always to take care of themselves and your loved ones, and we will work with you on a distance learning plan after that task has been completed. But things we wanted that have changed since yesterday. First, we will be in distance learning till at least May 4th, so for the entire month of May, and that's certainly entire month of April. Thank you. And so that is
the entire month of May.
that is true
my
too.
Suspicions myself.
Well, you can see that I put in there. They did say to us, you should plan for longer. So
Yeah.
we know it's till May 4th at least, but they did say plan for longer. But in that planning, the commissioner and the governor came back with some other things we have to pay attention to. And those are April 3rd and 17th are now considered professional development days, professional meeting days for our staff. So our staff will be working, however, we will not be posting lessons or engaging with our students on those 2 days. So April 3rd is coming up this Friday. Sort of caused us to scramble a little bit, but we've got a great PD plan together for our staff, and we'll put one together for the 17th. And then they've also articulated that April 9th will be a no school day. So that's a Thursday. It connects to April 10th, which was Good Friday, and that gives everyone a long weekend. What they did say to us, though, is that these 3 days will count toward our 180. So we won't have to add 3 days onto the schedule. They're counting them as days that will already be encompassed in our schedule. Now, I recognize school calendars need to be approved by the school committee, so I certainly will do this in the rears at our next meeting, but wanted to make you aware of it, that this is what we've been asked to do. The other thing that came out of our work was being told and understanding that there will be no RICAS and SAT testing this year. So no testing there. However, there will be AP tests. So we've made our students aware who are taking AP tests that currently there's a live lesson every day that they can take that's being produced by AP that covers the subject they're in, and then we'll actually know the testing schedule this Friday on April 3rd. So we want to make AP students aware that those tests will continue. They will be an online version. So some changes to our schedule there, but the most important one is that we will be in distance learning till May 4th. So as a result, our response to that change is to move from what we are currently doing, which is asynchronous. We post assignments, we let students integrate with those assignments at any time they'd like during the school day, submit those assignments back, and our teachers work in that system. We are now going to move to a virtual classroom for portions of the education, and a virtual classroom is synchronous. These are exact times where we're going to ask students to engage with their student either by using Zoom or Google Classroom. And so we have some specifics around that. First of all, we're going to start live lessons on Monday, April 6th. We've been gearing our staff up to do this. One of the things we're very confident about moving to this live lesson is we've identified every family in Tiverton who did not have the internet and are providing them a hotspot to work with, so that all homes should have the internet. So anyone listening to this broadcast today and doesn't have the internet, please get in touch with us. You can email us at techsupport@tivertonschools.org, and we will certainly react to that as soon as possible and get you that a hotspot to your home. The key thing, and here's the thing we want to express to parents, is that live lessons only work if the students are there, right? So we need you to make sure your son or daughter is available at the time of their live lesson. We will be providing guidelines for live lessons to all of our students. We'll be sending that out tomorrow on Wednesday. And some of the key things that students need to look at it like they're going to school. So we expect appropriate clothing and appropriate language at all times. And again, the exact schedules for each student's class will be sent by their principals again this week, but the live lessons will be starting on Monday, April 6th.
How many hours a day will each student expect to be spending
Great question.
in live
And there's the schedule.
There it is. All right.
So we're trying to make this as doable for our staff members, but recognizing that this type of contact with teacher-student is critical to the educational process and the continuing the great work we've been doing all year. So we feel like we've created something that should be a great balance for homes, students, and our teachers. So if I start at the elementary level, grades K to 4, we're asking those teachers to have a daily morning meeting with their students for about 10 minutes. We're letting the teacher decide the time of that morning meeting, again, sometime in the morning. And then the students will be involved in 3 live lessons during the week. A reading lesson on Monday, a math lesson on Wednesday, and a science lesson on Friday. And I have to emphasize, these are mini lessons. These are 20 minutes where a teacher can teach a new concept, reinforce an old concept, check in with their students, and keep the learning process moving forward. At the middle school level, students are going to log in for 1 lesson per class that they attend. So they're going to have 1 math lesson a week, 1 science lesson, 1 social studies, 1 science, 1 foreign language. And again, Principal Craven will be sending out that schedule, so students will have 5 lessons a week, spread out over a 5-day work week. And again, these are going to be mini lessons, 20 minutes, reinforce the concept, teach something new. And pretty much the middle school schedule is the same as the high school, that each full-time class that a student takes, they will have that 20-minute lesson for that class. Most students take 5 classes during the school day. Some students take electives. We made a little different schedule for our elective teachers, classes that meet every other day. But for the major core courses, it's 1 contact per week for about 20 minutes. So again, we feel like this is, I think parents will appreciate this. There'll be a time when they will sort of step away from the educational process and let our teachers start engaging again. And again, we feel like it's a doable thing because it's not a lot of time, but it's critical time.
Got it.
So we've just said to people, it's all about cooperation and responsibility, and we really need to rely upon our parents to help us to make sure that once the schedule is out and you know when your student's live lesson is and or morning meeting at the elementary level, that you make sure your son or daughter is there, logged in, ready to go. And if you do that, we promise you're going to have a great experience with our teachers. So I'll leave it up on the schedule and pause there and certainly answer any questions.
Okay, great. So for any members of the public, we are not monitoring Facebook today. However, please feel free to email questions to any of our principals or any of our teachers or Dr. Sanchioni or Mrs. Donnelly Roach if you have questions about what we've just discussed. So now I'm going to open it up to the committee and see if they have questions. Mrs. Pavo, I'll ask you first. Any questions of Dr. Sanchioni or about the process?
Not at this time, Jerry.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Black?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Farnworth?
Of course I have questions. Really, this first one's just for clarification. Peter, you mentioned every home in Tiverton should have internet access at this point. Are you saying every home of a student has access, or are you not certain at this point?
So after going through or going through the asynchronous part this week, and every day we check to see which students are engaged. If we saw a family or a student wasn't engaging for 2 or 3 days, we were reaching out and contacting that family. And if that family articulated to us that the reason was that they didn't have the internet, we're actually giving them a hotspot that's going out tomorrow. So we feel like that safety net of checking students every day lets us see who's engaging, and if they're not engaging, we find out the reason, and then we're able to assist them. So I think I can say with great confidence, probably we're going to be 99% sure that every house has internet access after these hotspots are distributed.
And then I'm looking at this schedule, and it's pretty consistent, looking like 20-minute sessions, really from K through 12. So that each subject area pretty much is touched upon. Are there any plans to increase that amount of live learning time in future weeks, or is this the plan for the entire month?
I think at the moment this is going to be the plan for the entire month. I think this has been, it's a huge transition for everyone, right? And we're all on this continuum of student, families, parents, and our teachers. And, we went into this with asynchronous this week. We'll be asynchronous next week, but then we go live lesson on the 6th. And we want to make sure it's doable for everyone. And I think the schedule we created, and it's in fact that. So at this time, our intention is to keep this in place until May 4th. However, if we stay out longer, certainly we would adjust based upon the needs of our students.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Palish?
One of the questions I had, I think Peter answered. One of the questions that had come to me from a parent was, are we just reinforcing what they've already learned, or are we going to, teach new content and assess? And so clearly now we're moving to teach new content and assess. My other question is the hotspots. Are we taking advantage of the free Wi-Fi that all of the providers are offering? How is that being paid for?
So that's you have to arrange that personally on your own phone. So if you have a phone with a hotspot, then they're not going to charge you for that service. So we've made that information aware of to our families.
So
but
the
I think
ones that hotspots that we're providing, then the school is paying for that access.
yes, we're paying for that for the months of schooling. They will have that access. Yep.
Thank you.
So, and I would ask any parent or anyone actually listening or watching this later on, if they know of an acquaintance or friend who may be having difficulty, to please let them know, because they may not be watching this meeting if they don't have
Right.
access, and they may not be able to access their email or other things as readily as you might expect or hope. So if anybody knows of a family or acquaintance that is having issues, to please let them know that we will do everything we can to help arrange that access for their children.
Yeah,
And,
if we know about it, we'll get it to
Gary,
them.
through the governor, I mean, they really have, the internet providers really have stepped up. And even if it's not coming from us, if they have access to a cell phone, we're gonna make sure that they have access to the internet.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's great, but I can envision people who are, if you will, in an electronic desert, who just are not even getting that kind of information because they don't have, they don't have access to the information that, they don't have the access to the technology whereby the information is flowing. So just if anybody knows of anybody, let them know that we will do everything we can to connect them. So,
Can I ask one more question?
of course.
Dr. Sanquioni, you mentioned that there'll be no standardized testing this year, in particular the SAT. I know for the high schoolers at large, this is, a pass on standardized testing. However, for those that are getting ready to apply to college, have you heard anything in the upper education field? I know a lot of schools don't use the SAT anymore for admissions, but many still do. Is this going to impact, in particular, our juniors?
Ride is checking, doing some work on that for us and reaching out to universities and seeing how this whole process is going to be adjusted as a result of this. But our juniors still will have the chance to take the SAT in the fall,
Okay.
when they're seniors. So we'll make sure that's available to them, and we'll make the adjustments for them.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been very concerned about that group in particular. I know, the seniors are going to probably be sacrificing some of their congratulatory exercises as they head toward the end of the year. But the juniors, I'm very concerned about as they're starting to make plans to apply to colleges and other schools. And this whole thing's putting a big wrench into everyone's plans. So
Yeah.
whatever we can do.
And I guess I wouldn't say a good thing, but the thing that makes it a little equal is it's the whole country, right? So our kids
Right.
will be in the same situation as others, and so adjustments are going to have to be made, and certainly the colleges will have to make those adjustments.
There's your glass half full. Thank
Mhm.
you.
So I have just one question. The AP lessons, is that in addition to the regular AP curriculum?
So our AP teachers are still making contact with their students, and will start live lessons on the 6th. But what the College Board did is they've hired instructors for every AP course that's out there, and every day there's an algebra lesson, there's a chemistry lesson, there's an art lesson, and students can just access that for free so they can continue with their development and the content that they're supposed to have mastered. So it's not a requirement from us, but we've certainly made those AP students aware of it and hope they'll take advantage of it.
I'm getting on that, okay? Thank you. Any other questions from the committee on this topic?
And just so you know, Dr. Locken, Ms. Delcourt is monitoring this on Facebook, and
Okay.
she says if any questions come in, she'll forward it to us.
Okay, all right, so I've just been informed that we are monitoring Facebook, so if there are questions that you want to post, they will be forwarded to us. Great. Facebook is everywhere. All right. So the next topic is the financial impact, insofar as we are able to determine that from the distance learning.
Yeah, so, you can just take down the presentation, Dave. So at a very cursory level right now, there's no numbers we can share with you. We're analyzing our budget and our expenses compared to how this affects us. And we certainly know there's certain areas that there'll be savings in. So for example, substitute teachers. We're not using substitute teachers now. We'll have some savings there. We'll have some savings in food service because of lunches and things of that nature. We may have savings in stipends. For example, it doesn't look, and I hate to say this, but it doesn't look like positive that our spring sports will run. So if our sports don't run, all those stipends would be savings there. We hope that isn't the case, but it's not looking good. So those are the things we're looking at. Now, one of the big savings potentially would be transportation. And so we actually need to talk to our attorney about this. We know that when our buses don't run for this amount of time, and our special ed transportation for that amount, we would save significant amount of dollars. But we've seen some guidance from the federal government saying that if we don't pay our bus contractors, we won't qualify for the stimulus package. And so this sort of leaves us in a little jeopardy here. And right now, we are not paying our bus contractors, or we've informed them of that, as most district in Rhode Island has. And interestingly, even RIDE is not paying for their transportation for special ed students. So we're kind of all in this together and kind of waiting to see, what this actual legislation says and what the impact of us is going to be. Certainly, we'd want to probably know how much stimulus we were getting compared to how much we pay our bus company, and if there's a delta to the positive and a negative would help us make that decision. So that's why we can't be specific with you right now on numbers.
Well, my expectation in that case would be that the transportation companies demonstrate to us that they have not laid off their workers.
Well,
In
we
that
know they
case,
have.
That's
Yeah.
my concern as well, because some of those are frankly parents of ours.
Right.
So I don't think that we should, well, this is a decision, of course, for the committee, and we can take that up at another point, but I don't think that we should be paying them anything until it's really quite clear what the issues are. And
Or if
again,
we have to. It's
Yeah.
unclear if we, and I'm on a call almost every other day with superintendents or with RIDE or with the commissioner, and some attorneys have weighed in on this, and no one really knows the answer. We just know that there's a line in one document that says, it's expected that you should pay your bus contractors, but not mandate, so we got to figure it out. That's what I'm saying to you.
I think just also to address one of the other things you said about stipends, I think we have to look at those as contractual obligations on the one hand, and even if they're not, I think we need to discuss whether or not we take that action. I off the cuff, feel uncomfortable not paying someone a stipend who actually was willing to do the work but was unable to as a result of all these circumstances, especially given how readily the teachers have worked and how hard they've worked to make this plan a success. But I think that's something we can take up as a committee if we're anticipating doing something like that.
Yeah, certainly will be your decision. We just, what I articulate to you is potential savings.
Yep. Okay.
Dr. Larkin,
Yes, Mrs. Black.
Dr. Sanchioni, do you know if there'll be any additional cost? I mean, I think you just mentioned one with the, in the last segment. I know the rescue package is on the premise that they're going to pay their workers so their workers can survive.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not paying their workers, that's, the bus company, but do you see any additional costs that we're going to have because of this, like with technology or anything like that?
The only cost would be the cost we're going to assume for the people who need the hotspot and for the activation of that Wi-Fi. And I'd say to you that that's under $4,000 if we max out every hotspot that we have. So
Okay,
very,
so
very
that's-
minimal.
yeah.
We're fortunate that we had enough devices to give out to all of our families.
That's good. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Dr. Sanchioni, if I may, have you, with the buildings being empty, has the heat been turned down?
Yes, yeah, that's on the list here too. It absolutely has, yeah.
Well, quite saving electricity and heat then, huh?
Right. It's just hard to get an idea what that savings will be right now, but thank you for mentioning it. We have fuel, oil, and electricity on here, and Ms. Roderick is tracking that for us.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Just looking at the stimulus email that we got from Tim Duffy this afternoon, that stimulus money is divided among the states. it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean there won't be another bucket, there won't be another pass, but I was just looking at what all the states were getting, and it sounds like a lot, but when you start dividing it among all the states, it doesn't look, at least initially, on this first pass, like it's going to be significant. There'll be something, but it doesn't look like it's going to be significant. And then, once it gets to Rhode Island, obviously, then there's 39 cities and towns. So, I think Dr. Sanchione's point is a good one. Is we really will have to look at the delta if there is some sort of language that doesn't allow us to take it. If we do X and Y, but X and Y would actually save us more, we're really going to have to, do that analysis.
Yep. Ms. Pavo, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. So the next item is the FY21 budget.
Yeah, I think that one of the slides has been up on the screen for a little bit, and I appreciate our tech department for being ahead of the game. So I wanted to start by just reminding you where we all are currently. And you've seen this slide, and we've talked about these numbers, since early December. And just reminding the committee that we were hoping for 4%. Even with 4%, what you're seeing on this slide, we still faced a deficit of 2.2 million. And I would recommend to the committee that we offset that deficit of 2.2 million with some fund balance and Medicaid funds that would bring it down to 1.4. Again, I'll reiterate that is based upon receiving 4%. And then to address a $1.4 million deficit, we went through a whole bunch of reductions and cuts. So we started with expense accounts. I know we've gone through this list here. In our expense accounts, it came in at about $175,000. Then we had to go to non-instructional personnel, which started to get very painful when you talked about the SRO and our truant officer and aides that do great work for us. And then eventually we had to talk about instructional staff. And here we're cutting elementary teachers, middle school teachers, and getting some offsets in our health insurance benefits. And then we still weren't quite there, so then we went back to our expense accounts and brought these down below actual cost, but it just seemed prudent to do in light of cutting more personnel that are just critical to our success. So with all that being done, and in the hopes that we were going to come in at 4%, that wasn't realized, at least by the Budget Committee's recommendation of last week. So I'll skip that slide. And it's just simple numbers. We were asking for 4%, which was $986,000. If you give us 2, that's half, and that leaves another cut of $493,000. So we worked together as an administrative council. We're starting to formulate a list of what that would look like, and should be able to share that with you next week. One of the things, as we talked about just recently, was the offsets as a result of being out of school, and if there's savings in the FY20 budget, could we use that to address this offset? We certainly would make that recommendation to the school committee if you were interested in doing that, but we certainly will also provide you with a list of what this would look like. So it's painful, and it's impacting what education will be like in the Tiverton Public Schools for our students. It hurts at when we were making the cut at 4%, and all these things that went again. Especially these staff reductions. And so to cut another almost $500,000, it's going to be devastating. It really is. And so one of the things that was brought to my attention, and again, I'll put this out there certainly for your consideration, is that you have wisely used your fund balance and Medicaid money to balance our budgets, and certainly the town also has a fund balance. And in that fund balance, you've contributed $700,000 to that fund balance as a result of construction done using money that was in the school department's fund balance that came back as a reimbursement as part of the RIDE Foundation. So if the town was willing to maybe look into their fund balance to offset that $493, it doesn't raise taxes. I know it might be painful to cut into fund balance money, but it's a way to sustain and at least keep the school system somewhat successful in what we're trying to do. So that's a consideration. I don't know how that mechanism could be executed. Those of you who've been around would probably be able to tell us that. So I'll put that out for consideration and just come back to, the 493. We'll be able to address that with you specifically, what that is next week.
So, Dr. Sanquioni, the first thing I want to bring out to you, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, the town's financial town referendum has been delayed by 1 month to June 20th of this year. So we do have an increased time frame in our budget season.
Yeah, I appreciate the schedule you set. That was excellent, Ms. Farnwood.
Okay. Secondly, my calculation's a little different than yours. I'm actually seeing more in cuts required, so I'll have to do a comparison with our finance director on that.
Okay.
The mechanism, we have basically, if there is no change in the vote, which of course having that extension to me calls into question a lot, right? The town needs to find out how much money they're going to get stimulus wise, how much they're going to anticipate losing from having the casino closed. There are an awful lot of questions that need to be resolved that are really unrelated to this. But, I think that extended period will allow some of that research to be done and some of the communications to come down from the state as well. As far as our options are concerned, really there are two. I mean, the school committee could choose to submit an alternate budget. And that's something that we can certainly discuss down the road. I don't think we need to make a decision on it at this time, and then secondly, we may, just as was the case last year, see a citizen from town submit an alternate budget or a citizen petition as well. A lot is still hanging out there. Hopefully we do see a little change here in what we're faced with. We're already cutting an awful lot. Those cuts, even at our 4% request, were going to hurt a great deal. So all I can say is I'm happy that I'm seeing a 1 month delay. I'm not sure if it's enough of a delay given the current circumstance and the fact that we're all locked in our homes basically. It doesn't allow for much in the way of citizen input with the way things are right now, but hopefully that works for all of us so that we as a town can have what is a correct budget at the end of the whole process.
Yeah, I would say I have to agree that, we don't really know what the final financial impact of the pandemic will be on the town or on the schools. And we don't know when we'll know that. So that's certainly a consideration. I think it was prudent to delay the financial town referendum by 30 days. I think we always have to keep in mind, and I'm sure the council was when they took this decision, that that's the culmination of a series of events that are supposed to occur for the 45 or 60 days prior to that. And so you would have to back that into, sometime in early May, and I would just not be optimistic that that's actually going to be a realistic date all the same. And then I think one of the other two very important points that, based on some of the discussion that was had at the budget committee meeting last night, is that one is that the cuts we have been talking about to date are with actually drawing down all of our reserves, as well as still getting 4% in the local appropriation. So those cuts were, in a sense, things that already were recommended and are already kind of in play. We're now talking about additional cuts if the budget is only, the increase is only 2%. And so that's one point. The second is, these are still recommendations. There are other ways that the committee may go. One of the things that came up in the meeting, the budget committee meeting last week, was the funding of the SRO. If we did cut that position, which I have deep reservations about, regardless of the financial, well, maybe not regardless, but certainly I have deep reservations about at baseline, without knowing what other impact it may have. But it also seems that per the contract with the police union, that could then shift that cost to the police department's budget. I would have maybe even deeper reservations about doing that. I don't think that that's what a good partner does in trying to advance public discourse. That's really all I have to say about the budget. We'll have to continue the discussion to see how things work out. I don't know if anybody else has comments. Mrs. Black, I'll let you go next.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Larkin. So as I look at this, and I'm glad Dr. Larkin explained it again, usually when we put a budget out and it's less than what we thought we were going to get, we tell people what might be cut. You know, that's how it's always been. But everyone has to understand these things have already been cut, as Dr. Larkin said, and then we're going to have a deeper cut. Now, as far as the SRO goes, you know, everyone knows how I feel. Safety first. That was first a grant from No Child Left Behind that Chief Blakey and the school department worked on together. Then when the grant ran out, we came to the town and we said, let's split this, and we get the 3/4, and they work in the summer. And as Dr. Larkin said, we didn't know that was in the contract, but it is, and it even gives the hours and everything in the schedule. So I feel as he does that, you know, as far as that piece goes. But when I look at this, and I would never ask, and I know the situation we're in, but when I look at these numbers, we always have our charts out. And I want to point out once more that in FY, this is the town contribution. Now the important thing is we always had charts, but it had the town and the state on it. So it didn't even look at that. But then when we split it out to see what the town gave, in 16 it was 0%, in 17 it was 0, in 18 it was minus 0.5, and in 19 it was 0.4%. That's what we got from the town. So after a while, and we told everyone this, you start going backwards, and that's where we are now. And we're in a serious situation in this country, but we're also in a serious situation in education and in the education of the students of Tiverton. So altogether, town council, budget committee, school committee, as we always have done in the past, let's look at how we can move our whole town forward. But I'm not ready to vote. And I remember one time, Mrs. Powers, when we had a town meeting, and they had cut us $600,000, and you ran out of the audience over to me, and you said, it's your responsibility to take care of these kids. That's why you ran. And that's the truth. And so, well, I hope we can all work together and make sure nobody in this town loses out more than they already are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Black. Ms. Pavo, anything?
No.
Ms. Farnworth? Diane, you still there?
Sorry, I had put myself on mute. No, not at this time.
Okay, I won't say what I was going to say about putting you on mute. Deb Palish?
I think right now, I appreciate the gift of time. I think there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how bad things are going to be. We don't know what kind of stimulus money we're going to have. We don't know what our savings are going to be this year. And I very, very much appreciate the emergency order extending the FTR. And right now, the gift of time is, great because it gives us an opportunity to have better data.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That is very true. We, need to continue going through this together, and when we are through it, we need to figure out what we do for everybody. Everybody's health and well-being. So, okay. All right. if there's no other questions, no questions from
No, 18
Facebook?
watching, no comments.
Okay, so then, under Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, job performance, character, physical or mental health teacher, and Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, litigation, legal advice, personnel, I'm gonna ask for a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Roll call.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna go by roll call. Ms. Palish,
Yes.
Ms. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Ms. Black?
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay, we are in executive session.
All right, we just need a second to switch out the,
Yeah, we need to make sure we
System.
are not.
yes.
Yes, please just
That's
get this.
it.